This video covers an incident that happened in 1999 where President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela defied the Clinton administration and visited Cuba. Chavez had not been inaugurated as president, and he planned on meeting with President Clinton, but the United States advised him simply not to meet with President Castro before coming to Washington. On February 4th, 1992, Chavez got introduced to the world by leading a military coup attempt that failed. The goal was to arrest the president of Venezuela, but the President Perez escaped. Chavez surrendered and was jailed to await trial. And this is when the world first became aware of Chavez. Well, 6 years later, in 1998, Chavez was the leading candidate in the presidential election campaign. In 6 years, he had catapulted to this position. He had become a national hero while he was in jail, actually being released by the president of Venezuela, Caldero, in 1994 because political opinion, the public's opinion, was so strong in favoring Chavez's release that Caldera pardoned him and let him go. And he was the leading candidate in 1998. Now, in 1998, I think it was in April, Chavez applied for a visa to visit the United States. He'd never been in the United States before. He wasn't using any anti-American messaging in his campaign. He emphasized over and over again that he wanted to have foreign investment in Venezuela, and he was invited to Miami to do a television interview. And so he accepted that invitation because he wanted to introduce himself to an American audience so they could get to know him. And so he had to apply for a visa. Well, Madeleine Albright was Secretary of State at the time, and she denied Chavez's request for a visa because of prior terrorist activity due to that 1992 coup attempt. Secretary Albright said, look, Mr. Chavez had participated in a violent effort to overthrow a democratic government. He's ineligible for a visa. And so even before Chavez was elected, he's still just campaigning for the presidency at this point. The United States had some fairly negative opinions about him. But Chavez was elected president in December 1998, and the U.S. ambassador hustled right down and had a visa delivered to him on December the 7th. In Venezuela was the number one country exporting oil to the United States. 1.7 million barrels of oil a day were coming from Venezuela to the United States. The country was very, very important to the United States. Chavez is going to be the leader of that country. Basically, the United States needed to get to know him and try to get on good terms with him. He's going to be a very important leader for the economy of the United States. And President Clinton sent a very congratulatory letter to Chavez in December, just expressing his congratulations. Your incredible margin of victory is a clear testimony, strong democratic conviction, and the wishes for a positive change that Venezuela wants. The president was very congratulatory, very effusive in his remarks to President-elect Chavez. There is a Venezuelan American Chamber of Commerce, and there are over 500 companies in Venezuela from the United States. And Chavez was the keynote speaker. Even again, he's elected president-elect on December 19th. And he again reemphasized this desire that he had for American investments to increase. So he was very positive for American investments. He had not said anything negative about the United States, and he was doing hopeful things. But just below the surface, there still was this concern from the United States toward Chavez. Here is a note that was picked up by the Washington Post, and how the Clinton administration was warning President-elect Chavez. Relations will sour if he implements any kind of radical political or economic measures. So even though Chavez hadn't said any anti-American type sloganeering, campaigning, the United States was still concerned and had to warn the president-elect that he might have this problem. So President-elect Chavez, he was going to be inaugurated in February 1999, and he planned a January 1999 week-long trip. Basically, he's still just president-elect, but he's going to go to Spain, France, Germany, Italy, and Canada to meet leaders. And on the way home, he planned to stop in Cuba and then in the United States. And he said basically what he was going to try to do was to introduce himself during the tour to foreign leaders who he'd never met, and explain his positions. And he wants democracy. And he says, he's had some negative press around the world, and he wanted to do something about that. So in France and Spain, Chavez had official meetings with President Chirac of France, Spain's King Juan Carlos, of very positive meetings. He got to explain himself. The president, the king, understood where he was coming from. They were happy to have their picture taken with him, shaking hands. Chavez was being accepted. He was being accepted as the leader of Venezuela going forward in these countries. Look forward to working with him. But while he was in Spain, the United States urged Chavez not to travel to Cuba. He received a phone call from a U.S. State Department official who urged him to cancel his visit to Cuba before arriving in the U.S. It would not be in Chavez's interest to visit President Fidel Castro before coming to the White House. He even threatened to cancel Washington visit if Chavez did not comply. And Chavez basically told the U.S. representative he had no intention of canceling his Cuba visit. He had important things that he wanted to discuss with Castro, and he wasn't going to bow to this request from the United States to cancel that trip. Again, America, the United States, was trying to isolate Castro, did not want Castro to be recognized, basically. And here's Chavez proposing to go to Cuba before coming to the United States. And the United States said, no, we don't want you to do that. Well, Chavez went to Cuba anyway, and he met in Havana with President Castro and the president of Colombia. They had a private meeting. They had peace negotiations going on in Colombia, right next to Venezuela. And I think the president of Colombia and Castro wanted to bring Chavez up to date on that. What's going on with these negotiations? Again, introducing Chavez to the world stage. There were no agreements. There were no announcements were made. It was simply a private meeting between three presidents, and it happened to be in Havana. So then he went on to the United States for his meeting with President Clinton, and they met on January 27, 1999. But Clinton decided not to receive Chavez in an official capacity. There weren't going to be any pictures of the two of them shaking hands. Clinton had Chavez come in through the back door. Clinton met with him in an informal room in the White House. No press were allowed in. And as you can see, Clinton received Chavez with a soda. You can see the soda in the picture in one hand, very casual attitude, about a 15-minute meeting, and unannounced to the world. There were no protocol involved at all. And that's essentially sort of letting him know that he didn't do what the United States wanted him to do, and he would be treated accordingly. Now, Chavez was president of Venezuela for 13 years, and he never had an official meeting with a U.S. president. He had some informal meetings with President Obama at meetings that they attended, but never an official meeting, never was in the White House. And Venezuela was a very important supplier of oil to the U.S. market, but he was treated with suspicion, treated with a certain amount of hostility throughout his presidency. And you can see in this picture, he did meet President Clinton briefly at the UN in a meeting in September 1999 after he had been inaugurated as president. But again, no official photographs no shaking of hands, nothing like that happened. So this write-up describing this incident is available and on the blog, the Venezuela Reader. Everything that documents this talk is available for inspection there.